Hey everyone, this is Dawn. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk about some stamping basics and getting started tips and tricks, and then at the end of the video we'll talk about some techniques. So Close to My Heart stamps come in these 6x6 envelopes with a carrier sheet and a backing, and hang on to this foam backing because it's actually a tool. And here is the stamping starter kit from Close to My Heart. It comes with a stamp chamois, black ink, and a 2x2 block. So those are really the basics of what you need to get started stamping. So here's my 2x2 block, and this is the stamp chamois. And what you do with it is you wet it down with water, just water, and this one has been much loved. I keep it in a 6x6 envelope. When it dries, it will get hard, but I just lay it on top of that envelope while I'm using it, and then I just slide it in and leave the envelope open so it can dry. Okay, so here are the Close to My Heart inks, and they come in packaging that is magnetic. So when you open it and close it, it will magnetically seal. The black ink that I like to use is Memento from Sukaniko. Close to My Heart used to sell it, and so that's why I have a couple of them. And I just like it because it cleans completely off of my stamps, and you can use it with alcohol inks. Okay, the next thing we should talk about is a stamping surface. The Versamat from Close to My Heart has two surfaces. One is a self-healing mat, and the other side is a soft mat for stamping to give some cushion underneath the stamps, especially for detailed stamps or background stamps. You want to get a clean image, and so you need a bit of a cushion. If you don't have a Versamat, then that is what that 6x6 backing foam is for. So to start stamping, you just set your stamp down, and the blocks are made so that they're curved on one side, and it's sort of an area for you to put your fingers. And then there is a hard edge on the other side. So you want to be able to read Close to My Heart towards you, and then you want that hard edge to be down. Also, there's a white line on the bottom of the block, and that's to help you look through your block so that you can line up your stamp. So make sure that you can read Close to My Heart towards you, and the rounded edges are up. Look through and see that line, and then just stick your stamp to your block. Okay, before using your stamp for the first time, you need to season it. And that is because the stamps have a film on them from the manufacturing process. So you can take a microfiber cloth and rub it, and it should get cloudy, and that's a good thing. So you can rub it over that. Another thing you can do is take the rub and remove eraser and gently kind of erase your stamp, or just rub it on your arm because the oils from your skin will remove that film. Then you take a light colored ink and stamp off on a piece of scratch paper. So inking up your stamp, something you should say to yourself is tap, tap, twist, twist, tap, tap. The inks in the Close to My Heart pads sit at the top of the ink pad, so you don't have to press down into the ink pad. So just ink it up and then stamp it off on scratch paper, and then you should be good to go for your next stamp. This also prevents your stamps from staining. If they get stained, it's not a big deal. It's just they'll still give a nice, clear, crisp image. I just like to keep my stamps as clean as possible. Another thing we should talk about is cardstock. Close to My Heart inks, stamps, and cardstock are all made to work with each other, but make sure you choose a quality heavyweight cardstock. The white Daisy that comes from Close to My Heart is 80-pound cover weight with a 215 GSM. And just keep in mind that if you use a lighter weight cardstock, then your inks are going to bleed and you won't be happy with the stamped results. Okay, so let's stamp an image, and keep in mind, remember that the inks are sitting at the top of the ink pad. So when they're in storage, they're actually upside down. So all of the ink is at the top, so you don't have to press too hard. Tap, tap, twist, twist, tap, tap, and then just stamp straight down. Don't rock your stamp, don't wiggle your stamp, just stamp it straight down and then give it a minute or a couple seconds to absorb into the cardstock, and then pull your stamp straight up. And that's it. You should have a perfectly stamped image. And then you clean it off with your stamp chamois. Always clean your stamps as soon as possible to prevent staining. Okay, types of stamps. There's different types that are referenced, and these are just general categories. There's shapes, which are the most popular, and then there are background stamps. If you look at the lower right, that geometric design is a background stamp to use behind images or pictures. There are border stamps that go along the edge of your cardstock. This is a large border. And then there are font stamps, and those are your letters. And sometimes the collections have numbers and other symbols. So here are a few that Close My Heart offers. Now for some techniques. So these are just some basic techniques, and then I'll have still photos of the results. So the first thing is that different images are used as embellishments, and you can fussy cut them with the fine tip scissors, or some of them come with a thin cut, so you cut them out, or you can use a Cricut cut, and then you can use these as embellishments on your cards or layouts. So here are a couple examples. Next one is random stamping, and that's pretty much just what it sounds like. So I'm going to show you here how to do it. You just choose an image, and then I lay my cardstock on some scratch paper because you want to stamp off the edge of your paper to give it more of a random impression. So you ink up your stamp, and then you're going to stamp in groups of 3. And then you're going to be creating a visual triangle. So the large stamp, I just created a visual triangle, and now with this small stamp, I'm going to create another visual triangle. And that aids in the randomness of the stamps on the page. And it's easier when you're actually putting them down to kind of think of it that way too. So here are a couple examples. The next category or technique is base and shade. So you'll find a lot of stamps have like a solid background shape, and then they have a more detailed stamp that goes over it. So you can stamp the solid one in a lighter color, and then you take your detailed stamp and stamp over it. And so that's in Ballerina and Raspberry. And then I'm going to stamp the leaves. I've got a solid leaf here. I'll put that down, and then I'll stamp over it with a detail stamp. So you'll find a lot of these available. So this is a flower with a leaf, and then here's another example of hearts. So that's a base and shade, and then there's tone on tone. And this one's similar to base and shade, but you're using the same color every time. So that's the solid background, and then that is the detail stamp that I stamped right over it, and that's in the same color. And then we'll go down and do that in another color. This is lilac. So I'm taking the solid, and then I'm going over it. So I'm just using the same color and stamping over it. And then another way that you'll hear it referenced is on cardstock colors. So this is Ballerina Cardstock, and I'm using Ballerina ink. I'm going to stamp the solid flower image in Ballerina, and then I'm going to stamp the detail flower over it in Ballerina. So here are a couple examples of tone on tone. Those are the flowers, and then the flower on ballerina, and then the hearts just on white cardstock. Okay, another technique is to put multiple images on one block. And this makes it easier to speed up your stamping and also to create some random stamped images. So I've got 3 snowflake images. I'm going to stamp them all at once. So I'm going to put these down in Bluebird. And that's all there is to it. So that's created with multiple images on the same block. And here's another one. I added letters. Okay, the next technique is first, second, and third generation stamping. So what we're going to do with this is take one image, we're going to ink it up, and then we're going to stamp multiple times without re-inking the stamp. So I'll show you what I mean here. We're inking up the stamp. I'm going to stamp it one time, that's first. I'm going to stamp again, second, and then I'm going to stamp again, and that's third generation stamping. So it gradually gets lighter. So that's a snowflake image, and here's another one with a butterfly. Okay, next technique is double stamping, and this is the easiest way you can achieve this is with a stamping tool like a MISTI, and we're just stamping the image, inking it up, stamping it, and then inking it up and stamping it again, and every time you're going to get a more intense stamped image, and it'll gradually get darker as well. So this one I have stamped 3 times in Sage. And then the dragonfly and the heart images as well were stamped multiple times. Rock and roll. This is one of my favorite techniques. What you do is you stamp your image, or you ink up your image in a lighter color, and then you roll the edges in a darker color. So you're just rolling around and then you stamp it down. And so you can see how the edges of the image were in the espresso in a darker color. So we'll do another one, ink it up, and then just roll the edges. And since you can look through your block, you can kind of tell how much ink you have on the edges. So there's one image with the pine cones. And here are some other examples of rock and roll and things you can do with that. Multiple color shading. So what I'm going to demonstrate here is with a tree, and it's going to be in multiple shades of green. But after I show you this, I'll have some images of different shades that you can do as well. So use a sponge dauber to do this, and just open up all of your inks because you need to work rather quickly. So you start with the lightest, and you just use your dauber to apply it to your stamp. And then you go with the next color and wherever you want it on your stamp. I'm just doing it from the light on the inside of the tree out with the outer edges in the darkest color. But you can do it however you want. And if you have ink on your stamp, you huff. You just breathe on it, and it'll moisten it a little bit more. And then you just stamp it right down. So here are the trees. And then I've got some other images with more than just the same color grouping. You can use whatever colors you want. The next technique is curved stamping. With the acrylic stamps, they have the ability to be placed on the block in different shapes. It doesn't, if it's a straight line image, it doesn't have to be straight, or if it's words, you can place them on the block in whatever shape you want. So I've just put this row of hearts in this squiggle image. It's a straight line of hearts, but I've put it on my block in the curved image, and then you ink it up and put it down. So here's another example where I curved the thinking of, and then also the dot 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 by the ladybug. I curved those. Heat embossing. This is a technique used with Versamark ink, which is a sticky ink, and embossing powder. So you stamp down your image in Versamark, and then you sprinkle embossing powder on top of it. And in this demo, I forgot to hit it with the anti-static powder tool. That helps to keep the powder from sticking to stray areas that you don't want it to stick to. So if you hit it with your anti-static pouch first and then stamp, it'll prevent powder from being in places you don't want it. And then you just heat it up with your heat tool and the embossing powder melts. It's a really fun technique. So here's the one that I just did. And then here's one in gold. There's all different kinds of embossing powders that you can choose from. Masking. This is when you want an image to be behind an image on your card. So I'm using masking paper here, but you can just use a Post-it note, something that has a low tack or temporary tack that you can place on your cardstock and then remove it. So I'm going to stamp down a pine cone, and then I want another pine cone to be next to it, but not covering up the one that's already down. So I just stamp it on my masking paper, and then I'm fussy cutting that pine cone out. Hang on to all your fussy cut masks, because I just stick them in the envelope with the stamp, because you can use them over and over. So then you stamp again wherever you want, and then you pull up your mask. And then you have two images that are not overlapping each other. And you can also do it with words, so you can mask off different portions of sentiments and change colors. Movement, giving the impression of movement. I'm going to put down this dog image, and he's going to be chasing a frisbee. And I'll show you how I'm going to get it to make it look like it's moving. So you stamp it the furthest one away, and it's almost like generational stamping. And then you stamp again kind of over it, and it looks kind of a cartoon image of it moving from the left side to the right. And this is a butterfly. And you just stamp multiple times. Coloring. There are a lot of stamps available now that give you the ability to color, and you can use all different kinds of mediums. Alcohol markers are popular, and Close My Heart sells the Spectrum Noir Tri-Blend markers. Each marker comes in a light, medium, and dark of the same shade of color. And you can just color them in. You can use colored pencils. You can use watercolor pencils. There are a bunch of different things that you can use to color in images. So here's a quick example, and here's another one of a wreath I just colored in multiple green colors. And then there's the faux base and shade technique. And this is pretty easy. All you need to do is take your stamp, and instead of placing it with the detail side up, you flip it over. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but it's the smooth side. You're going to stamp in a lighter color, and then you clean it off, and then you take your stamp and flip it back over, and then you ink up the detailed side of it and stamp over that. So then you have sort of a shape of the tree behind the detailed tree. I hope you found this video helpful today. I appreciate you watching. Supplies are available on my website. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching.